Hey buddies, so yesterday was D-Day for gamers everywhere as Xbox went backtracked completely, I think pretty much completely, on their DRM restrictions, their sharing, their region restrictions. It was a good day for gamers. Just like I said before, I want the best for the consumer because I am one, and that this was a victory for consumers. There's a lot of arguments out there about who won this victory. Some people, like Cliffy B, saying that it had nothing to do with the internet whining. I completely disagree. There were two parties involved in making Xbox make this decision, and there were three tiers to making that happen. The first party was the internet and the indignation being spouted by those who didn't want any of these restrictions. The second party was Sony, who took advantage of that and made it into a rallying cry at their press conference, and that was genius because they could have sat back and did nothing and just let Microsoft eat its lunch. They still would have suffered from it, but there was a validation that came with that press conference and twisting the knife, figuratively, on Microsoft. And that cheering from the audience that came from Jack Tretton's announcement that things would be the same as they always have been. Remember, Sony didn't do anything different. They were maybe already planning to do this. We will never really know that or not. If there had been, and this is where the internet comes in, and all of our annoyance and our rage, I guess if you want to call it that, came in. If we had laid down and when Xbox announced all these restrictions on used and trading and sharing games among your friends and being online in order to check in with Xbox to ask if you can have permission to play your own games, if we had been okay with that, Sony might have looked at that and said, I mean, why shouldn't we implement this if it's not a big deal? If Xbox has already announced it and nobody has a problem with it, why the heck shouldn't we? And they probably would have implemented it then, and the face of gaming would have been changed forever. I think it's important to maintain residual value in discs. I think it's a great model, and it's something that really works for friends and family and just gamers in general. Having that ability to trade and swap something as a physical medium, just like a book or a DVD, I think it's important. That said, actually, I want to stay on this topic. Just who is to be lauded for this decision by Microsoft. So then Sony also had a part in it by seeing that outcry, and they took advantage of it, and that was smart of them. And then the third tier, so there was the initial internet rage. The second tier was the conference in which they twisted the knife. The third tier was finally voting with your wallets, and that was probably the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back for Microsoft when they saw the pre-orders were outpacing, being dramatically outpaced. I went into a Best Buy in which they had little paper cards representing their pre-order allotment, and on day 2 of E3, they had, I wasn't in there day 1 of E3, maybe they were already gone then, but PS3 cards were gone, and the rack containing Xbox One cards was filled to the brim. And when I asked the guy how many Xbox One pre-orders he had, he said 2. And I said, how many for PlayStation then? And he said hundreds. So that just kind of right there tells you that Xbox, once that happened, the war room would have been open and they would have been flooding in there deciding what their strategy was. And it was a simple letter from Don Matrick saying, we listened. I don't think that, the thing is, they're trying to spin this as though they listened and cared about the consumer. What they care about was the bottom line, and that's the same as Sony too. They care about the bottom line. Sony saw a strategy, Xbox saw a strategy, Xbox took a gamble. Why they took that gamble, I'm not completely sure, because, well, I mean, what I think, my theory is what they wanted was this DRM and this restriction on used games because it would be a bargaining chip with publishers to bring them over to their platform instead of Sony's, because they could say, if this was successful, they could say to software producers like EA and Ubisoft, look, on our platform, people can't trade their games. They can't, once somebody buys it, that license is on them, and it's very restricted. So your game has potential to sell more if you come to us and spurn Sony. So that's a bargaining chip with the publishers. That's the only thing I could see. The other theory is that it was actually being lobbied by the publishers. Like EA was coming to Microsoft and saying, we'll give you big concessions in our in our deals with you, and our we'll pay more maybe to be on your platform. I don't know. This is speculation, but like that maybe EA came and the other publishers came to Xbox and said, if you put this forth, we'll play ball with you, and make it worth your while. I don't know how it all works in the back end and how those relationships work, but there was some motivation by Xbox to put this forth, and it was a gamble they took, and it failed, and now we have what we have today. That said, I'm a little bit disappointed because I kind of, for one, it's bittersweet because on one hand, like all that used stuff that I just talked about, that's great, but on the other hand, I wanted to see both models at play. I wanted to see Sony stick with the status quo, and obviously gamers would appreciate that. At the same time, I was very interested in how they were going to let this family thing play out. There are people in very specific circumstances, ours in particular, where we would have been potentially able to take major advantage of it and put the whole crew of the show on the family pack and be able to share those games amongst ourselves. I still think that there would have been unforeseen restrictions on that would have made it less peachy as it looked. We still don't know exactly how it was going to work. There was a lot of like the way that they say any one person in your family can play another game from your library, making it seem as though only one person at a time can share from the library, not just from the game, but also just you can only have two people playing from that library at one time. That was a speculation going on saying, is this a major restriction? Nobody was really sure. And that's why I kind of wanted to see it happen. I wanted to see what they were going to do with that. It had potential, I think, if they did it right, to be something that was kind of cool for very specific people and scenarios. So we won't get to see, at least this generation, how that was going to work. I think that's really my only disappointment in all of that. As far as people saying that, oh, congratulations, we have to continue to put discs in our friggin' trays as usual. That's great. I really wanted games on my hard drive. Hey, guess what, asshole? You can still have that. Buy the digital copies from their store on day one, just like they said there would be available for all major AAA titles. You idiots. That is still a feature that is available to you if you really feel like that. If you feel like having a digital copy that is not tradable and non-transferable, go ahead. Go ahead. That's your prerogative. That's for you to have, and if you want a library full of things like that you can access just like that, there you go. And I've been doing it myself on Steam. Sometimes I want that convenience, especially for midnight releases. I love not having to go out to the store or send Ben to the store and wait an hour after it's released after midnight, especially when it unlocks like 3 hours before midnight for a new release, and I buy it on Steam and I play it on the show. Of course, it's always cheaper when it is released on those days on Steam, but anyways, that's another topic. I think that kind of... That's my only disappointments is that seeing how it all would play out. But I guess that's now the best part out of all of this, from my perspective, is that I can finally start comparing the two systems as systems. Because before, the conversation wasn't even able to begin. Before, when you want to have a conversation about what should people buy, PS4, Xbox, it ends right there. It says PS4 because of a purchase of an Xbox One is a vote for restrictive DRM and the death of residual value in physical media. And that was not something I could recommend. Now, I can tell you that I'll enter into a conversation with people about what they should buy if they're going for an either-or scenario with the two systems. And I look forward to actually kind of finally analyzing the two systems and really deciding which one is better. Of course, you know, I want to talk about this more later, but of course there's some major things that immediately stand out to you. Price is still a big difference between the two systems. Power is still a big difference, according to a lot of people who have been analyzing the specs on PS4's favor. And then you have the indie game debacle, which I want to go into detail still on another vlog about how indies must find a publisher in order to publish on Xbox, which is bullshit. And then you have the whole reputation on Xbox with indies in the last year or two, which has not been good, even from some very much second-hand information I've been getting from indie developers, and it's publicly available out there. Team Meat, V-Blank Entertainment, look up what they've said about Xbox. And anyways, that's another topic. But it was a good day yesterday, and we can finally just put all that confusion aside. It's over. The chapter is closed, and we can get excited and really talk about the next generation of gaming. And it's going to be a fun one. This is going to be a sweet year. I love you guys, and tell me what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, favorite. It really helps me out. Fuck off. I love you.